Lingue originali. Camera con vista, probabilmente il libro più romantico e ottimista di Edward Morgan Foster, è il romanzo che insieme a Marco Piovaz stiamo sfogliando. Non potremo evidentemente sfogliarlo tutto, ma come sempre proporvi degli estratti qui a Lingue Originali nell'appuntamento dedicato alla lingua inglese. Compreso questo episodio, ce ne sono ancora 6 nella prima stagione di questo ciclo di trasmissioni, e in particolare quello con la lingua inglese è stato il primo, è quello col quale abbiamo rotto il ghiaccio con voi qui a Caffè Italia, decidendo di sperimentare la possibilità di raccontarvi autori dal punto di vista umano, dal punto di vista artistico, in lingua italiana, per poi farvi conoscere la musicalità della loro lingua madre, degli scritti originali. Ed allora, A Room in a View, Camera con vista. Camera con vista, il romanzo di Forster, il film di James Ivory, diretto da James Ivory nel 1985. Qual è il tema? Quali sono i temi principali del romanzo, e che poi chi ha visto il film ha ritrovato anche sul grande schermo? La sessualità repressa, la libertà dalle religioni istituzionali, la crescita all'età adulta e il vero amore. Ecco. Foster scrive in terza persona, come a voler mantenere una sorta di distacco dalla storia stessa. Però ci regala anche questa bella sensazione del raccontato visto con gli occhi dei protagonisti. Allora, siamo a Lingue Originali, appuntamento con la lingua inglese. Continuiamo a leggere con Marco Piovaz, Camera con vista. Titolo originale è A Room in a View di Edward Morgan Foster. Buon ascolto.
Miss Bartlett was already seated on a tightly stuffed armchair, which had the colour and the contours of a tomato. She was talking to Mr. Beebe, and as she spoke, her long narrow head drove backwards and forwards, slowly, regularly, as though she were demolishing some invisible obstacle. "We are most grateful to you," she was saying. "The first evening means so much. When you arrived, we were in for a particularly mauvais quart d'heure." He expressed his regret. "Do you by any chance know the name of an old man who sat opposite us at dinner?" "Emerson." "Is he a friend of yours?" "We are friendly, as one is in pensions." "Then I will say no more." He pressed her very slightly, and she said more. "I am, as it were," she concluded, "the chaperone of my young cousin Lucy, and it would be a serious thing if I put her under an obligation to people of whom we knew nothing. His manner was somewhat unfortunate. I hope I acted for the best." "You acted very naturally," said he. He seemed thoughtful, and after a few moments added, "All the same, I don't think much harm would have come of accepting." "No harm, of course, but we could not be under an obligation." "He is rather a peculiar man." Again he hesitated, and then said gently, "I think he would not take advantage of your acceptance, nor expect you to show gratitude. He has the merit, if it is one, of saying exactly what he means. He has rooms he does not value, and he thinks you would value them. He's no more thought of putting you under an obligation than he thought of being polite. It is so difficult, at least I find it difficult, to understand people who speak the truth. Lucy was pleased and said, I was hoping that he was nice. I do so always hope that people will be nice. I think he is nice and tiresome. I differ from him on almost every point of any importance, and so I expect, I may say I hope, you will differ. But his is a type one disagrees with rather than deplores. When he first came here, he not unnaturally put people's backs up. He has no tact and no manners. I don't mean by that he has bad manners, and he will not keep his opinions to himself. We nearly complained about him to our depressing signora, but I am glad to say we thought better of it. Am I to conclude, said Miss Bartlett, that he is a socialist? Mr. Beebe accepted the convenient word not without a slight twitching of the lips. And presumably he has brought up his son to be a socialist too? I hardly know George, for he hasn't learned to talk yet. He seems a nice creature, and I think he has brains. Of course, he has all of his father's mannerisms, and it is quite possible that he too may be a socialist. Oh, you relieve me, said Miss Bartlett. So you think I ought to have accepted that offer? You feel I have been narrow-minded and suspicious? Not at all, he answered. I never suggested that. But ought I not to apologize, at all events, for my apparent rudeness? He replied with some irritation that he would be quite unnecessary, and got up from his seat to go to the smoking room. Was I a bore? Said Miss Bartlett as soon as he had disappeared. Why didn't you talk, Lucy? He prefers young people, I'm sure. I do hope I haven't monopolized him. I hoped you would have him all the evening, as well as all dinner time. He is nice, exclaimed Lucy. Just what I remember. He seems to see good in everyone. No one would take him for a clergyman. My dear Lucia. Well, you know what I mean. And you know how clergymen generally laugh. Mr. Beebe laughs just like an ordinary man. Funny girl, you do remember me of your mother. I wonder if she will approve of Mr. Beebe. I'm sure she will, and so will Freddie. I think everyone at Windy Corner will approve. It is the fashionable world. I am used to Tunbridge Wells, where we are all hopelessly behind the times. Yes, said Lucy despondently. There was a haze of disapproval in the air, but whether the disapproval was of herself, or of Mr. Beebe, or of the fashionable world at Windy Corner, or the narrow world at Tunbridge Wells, she could not determine. She tried to locate it, but as usual, she blundered. Miss Bartlett strenuously denied disapproving of anyone, and added, I am afraid you are finding me a very depressing companion. And the girl again thought, I must have been selfish or unkind. I must be more careful. It is so dreadful for Charlotte being poor. Fortunately, one of the little old ladies, who for some time had been smiling very benignly, now approached and asked if she might be allowed to sit where Mr. Beebe had sat. Permission granted, she began to chatter gently about Italy, the plunge it had been to come there, the gratifying success of the plunge, the improvement in her sister's health, the necessity of closing the bedroom windows at night, and the thoroughly emptying the water bottles in the morning. She handled her subjects agreeably, and they were perhaps more worthy of attention than the high discourse upon whelps and ghibellines which was proceeding tempestuously at the other end of the room. It was a real catastrophe, not a mere episode, that evening of hers at Venice, when she had found in her bedroom something that is one worse than a flea, though one better than something else. But here you are as safe as in England. Signora Bertolini is so English. Yet our rooms smell, said poor Lucy. We dread going to bed. Ah, then you look into the court, she sighed. If only Miss Temerson was more tactful. We were so sorry for you at dinner. I think he was meaning to be kind. Undoubtedly he was, said Miss Bartlett. Mr. Beebe has just been scolding me for my suspicious nature. Of course I was holding back on my cousin's account. Of course, said the little old lady, and they murmured that one could not be too careful with a young girl. Lucy tried to look demure, but could not help feeling a great fool. No one was careful with her at home, or at all events, she had not noticed it. About old Mr. Emerson, I hardly know. No, he is not tactful. Yet have you ever noticed that there are people who do things which are most indelicate and yet, at the same time, beautiful? Beautiful, said Miss Bartlett, puzzled at the word. Are not beauty and delicacy the same? So one would have thought, said the other helplessly. But things are so difficult, I sometimes think. She proceeded no further into things, for Mr. Beebe reappeared, looking extremely pleasant. Miss Bartlett, he cried, it's all right about the rooms. I'm so glad. Mr. Emerson was talking about it in the smoking room, and knowing what I did, I encouraged him to make the offer again. He has let me come and ask you. He would be so pleased. Oh, Charlotte, cried Lucy to her cousin, we must have the rooms now. The old man is just as nice and kind as he can be. Miss Bartlett was silent. I fear, said Mr. Beebe after a pause, that I have been officious. I must apologize for my interference. Gravely displeased, he turned to go. Not till then did Miss Bartlett reply, My own wishes, dearest Lucy, are unimportant in comparison with yours. It would be hard indeed if I stopped you doing as you liked at Florence, when I am only here through your kindness. If you wish me to turn these gentlemen out of their rooms, I will do it. Would you then, Mr. Beebe, kindly tell Mr. Emerson that I accept his kind offer, and then conduct him to me in order that I may thank him personally? She raised her voice as she spoke. It was heard all over the drawing-room, and silenced the Guelphs and the Ghibellines. The clergyman, inwardly cursing the female sex, bowed and departed with her message. Remember, Lucy, I alone am implicated in this. I do not wish the acceptance to come from you. Grant me that, at all events. Mr. Beebe was back, saying rather nervously, Mr. Emerson is engaged, but here is his son instead. The young man gazed down on the three ladies, who felt seated on the floor, so low were their chairs. My father, he said, is in his bath, so you cannot thank him personally, but any message given by you to me will be given by me to him as soon as he comes out. Miss Bartlett was unequal to the bath. All her barbed civilities came forth wrong end first. Young Mr. Emerson scored a notable triumph, to the delight of Mr. Beebe and to the secret delight of Lucy.
A Lingue Originali, Marco Piovaz ha letto per voi in lingua inglese. Lo ritroveremo su Caffè Italia la prossima settimana, venerdì, sempre alle ore 22. Ma Lingue Originali è in onda anche il sabato con Nadia Meroni, con la lettura in lingua tedesca, e la domenica con Barbara Marchand, per quella in lingua francese. Vi ringraziamo per l'ascolto e vi diamo appuntamento a Lingue Originali fra 7 giorni, sempre su Caffè Italia, la radio e il podcast dall'aroma italiano, e non solo.
Lingue Originali.